Amy Goodman. Well, President Obama's reporting looking into tapping a former corporate executive to become his next top economic advisor. Many economists question the path the United States is on. Last week, during our trip to Bonn, Germany, I had a chance to speak with the acclaimed Chilean economist Manfred Max-Neef. He won the Right Livelihood Award in 1983, 2 years after the publication of his book, Outside Looking In, Experiences in Barefoot Economics. I began by asking him to explain what barefoot economics is.
Well, it's a metaphor, but a metaphor that originated in a concrete experience. I worked for about 10 years of my life in areas of extreme poverty, in the Sierras, in the jungle, in urban areas, in different parts of Latin America. And at the beginning of that period, I was one day in an Indian village in the Sierra in Peru. It was an ugly day. It had been raining all the time. And there I was standing in the slum, and across me another guy also standing in the mud, rather not in the slum, in the mud. And well, we looked at each other, and this was a short guy, thin, hungry, jobless, 5 kids, a wife and a grandmother. And I was the fine economist from Berkeley, teaching in Berkeley, having taught in Berkeley and so on. And well, we were looking at each other, and then suddenly I realized that I had nothing coherent to say to that man in those circumstances. That my whole language as an economist, was absolutely useless. Should I tell him that he should be happy because the GDP had grown 5% or something? Everything was absurd. So I discovered that I had no language in that environment, and that we had to invent a new language. And that's the origin of the metaphor of barefoot economics, which concretely means that is the economics that an economist who dares to step into the mud must practice. The point is, that economists study and analyze poverty in the nice offices, have all the statistics, make all the models, and are convinced that they know everything that you can know about poverty, but they don't understand poverty. And that's the big problem. And that's why poverty is still there. And that changed my life as an economist completely. I invented a language that is coherent with those situations and conditions.
And what is that language? How do you apply economics or have those situations explain economics changing?
Look, the thing is much deeper. I mean, it's not like a recipe typical of so many in your country, 15 lessons or satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. That's not the point. The point is much deeper. Let me put it this way. We have reached a point in our evolution in which we know a lot. We know a hell of a lot, but we understand very little. Never in human history has there been such an accumulation of knowledge like in the last 100 years. Look how we are. What was that knowledge for? What did we do with it? And the point is that knowledge alone is not enough, that we lack understanding. And the difference between knowledge and understanding, I can give it as an example. Let us assume that you have studied everything that you can study from a theological, sociological, anthropological, biological, and even biochemical point of view of a human phenomenon called love. So the result is that you will know everything that you can know about love. But sooner or later you will realize that you will never understand love unless you fall in love. What does that mean? That you can only attempt to understand that of which you become a part. If we fall in love, as the Latin song says, we are much more than two. No? When you belong, you understand. when you're separated, you can accumulate knowledge, and has been the function of science. Now, science is divided into parts, but understanding is holistic. And that happens with poverty. I understood poverty because I was there. I lived with them, I ate with them, I slept with them, etc. And then you begin to learn that in that environment there are different values, different principles compared to those from where you are coming, and that you can learn an enormous amount of fantastic things among poverty. What I have learned from the poor is much more than I learned in the universities. But very few people have that experience, you see. They look it from the outside, instead of living it from the inside. And you learn extraordinary things. The first thing, that people who want to work in order to overcome poverty and don't know, is that in poverty there is an enormous creativity. You cannot be an idiot if you want to survive. Every minute you have to be thinking, what next, what do I know, what trick can I do here, what this, and that. So your creativity is constant. In addition, that is combined, with networks of cooperation, mutual aid, and all sort of extraordinary things, which you no longer find in our dominant society, which is individualistic, greedy, egoistical, etc. It's just the opposite of that you find there. And it's sometimes so shocking that you may find people much happier in poverty than what you would find, in your own environment. Which also means, that poverty is not just a question of money. It's a much more complex thing.
What do you think we need to change?
Oh, almost everything. We are simply dramatically stupid. We act systematically against the evidences we have. We know everything that should not be done. There's nobody that doesn't know that. Particularly the big politicians know exactly what should not be done. Yet they do it. After what happened since October 2008, elementary, you would think, well, now they're going to change. They see that the model is not working. The model is even poisonous, dramatically poisonous. And what is the result? And what happened in the last meeting of the European Union? They are more fundamentalist now than before. So, the only thing that you can be sure of, that the next crisis is coming, and it will be twice as much as this one, and for that one there won't be enough money anymore. So that will be it. And that is the consequence of systematical human stupidity.
So to avoid another catastrophe collision, if you were in charge, what would you say has to happen?
First of all, we need cultured economists again, who know the history, where they come from, how the ideas originated, who did what, and so on and so on. Second, an economics now that understands itself very clearly as a subsystem of a larger system that is finite, the biosphere. Hence, economic growth as an impossibility. And third, a system that understands that it cannot function without the services of ecosystems. And economists know nothing about ecosystems. They don't know nothing about thermodynamics, nothing about biodiversity or anything.